Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the City of Bettendorf Committee of the Whole meeting. Today is Monday, July 15th, 2024. It's 5 o'clock p.m. Thank you all for joining us. We have two consent agenda items on tonight's agenda. They are the Spencer Creek Lift Station improvements, two different packages. And for that, we welcome our city engineer, Brent Morlock, to talk about consent items C and D for our consideration tomorrow night. Brent, you have the floor. Thank you for being here.
Great, thank you, Your Honor. Spencer Creek Lift Station project, a long time coming, I would say. I think the first set of plans that I saw for this project date back about 12 or 13 years ago, several iterations, a lot of locations. But obviously the wonderful growth that we're experiencing in the northeast part of Bettendorf, it's time to pull the trigger and go ahead and forward with this project. So as you said, we have two resolutions on tonight's agenda. Actually a total of three that relate to this project. There's two for the construction. There's also a small one that relates to our SRF capacity. So this project is going to be funded with the state revolving fund. I believe it's the first time we've used it. As part of that process, there is a compliance opinion that's required from a qualified municipal advisor, and our friends at Ehlers are taking care of that for us. So there's a third resolution that does accompany the construction. Wanted to give you a quick overview of the project. I'm going to flip through a few slides here that will show you the layout, the overall layout of the project. There's a couple more in detail. We'll talk a few minutes about the service areas so you guys can see what's a size for the initial build, what the ultimate build out will eventually be. And then I'll show you a couple of unique items that are probably driving part of the cost of this project. Right now, the estimated construction cost between the two packages is a little over $8 million. It's about $8.2 million. There's a total of about 10.5, I believe, that's programmed into the CIP, but that includes both construction and design and any other fees. So the overview that you see here, a little faded out the aerial, but here's our interchange, middle and 80. Obviously an older aerial that our consultants were using. You've got Forest Grove Park here. You've got Forest Grove Elementary School here, Spencer Hollow and Sterling Woods subdivisions, if you can kind of orient yourself. And then you have Wells Ferry crossing underneath I-80 here. Previous iterations of the project had the lift station kind of right back up in here, pretty much due north from Forest Grove Park. That was originally our intended location. As we looked at, took a fresh look with McClure and looked at some alternatives just to make sure we were finding the most efficient use of our dollars in terms of the benefits to the project. We had a unique opportunity because the ground right here, the former Blunk farm, approximately 110 acres, was in the process at that point of having a developer, the Windmiller family, that ultimately did purchase the property. So we were able to work with them. We're going to get all our easements dedicated to us at no cost as part of the development. It's a benefit to them. Obviously, that's going to allow them to have gravity sewer to their subdivision. So the box you see here, that's the location of the lift station. I'll go into a little more detail on some of the other ones. This extension right here is an 8-inch gravity sewer extension. That's going to take off one of the huge benefits of this project. We were able to engineer it to be able to remove the existing lift stations at both the Spencer Hollow subdivision and the about 30-year-old, maybe a little more, maybe 35 years, Sterling Woods lift station, which is a very problematic one for us. And then this extension to the north here that will cross under I-80 and run along the north right-of-way line is the main trunk sewer. That is a 24-inch gravity sewer. Okay, a little more detail here. This is the proposed lot configuration or road alignment that the Windmillers have given us. Now, they have not brought that forward for planning and zoning or council approval, but this is where we are. We've been working on iterations, several of them with them, to make sure that where we put this is going to be our force main. So what that is the lift stations down here. You'll have gravity sewers that are up in this location, and then the ones coming from the north. So that will gravity flow to the pump station. Pump station pumps it up through this 12-inch pipe here that will pump all the way back to the frontage of Forest Grove Park. So that is where we catch on to our Pigeon Creek interceptor. That is a 36-inch sewer in that location, and that is sized to handle all this. So we want to make sure where we put that pipe, obviously, does not fall in the middle of somebody's lot and the windmillers have to revise, or we would have to revise something. So several iterations, but we are coordinated now. If you look at the end here with the end of our project, that is the location of the Sterling Woods lift station. That's the access road that goes through the Valley Outdoor property is how we get to that now, so that'll be a nice benefit to them. We'll still have that easement in case we ever need to, but basically we turn these lift stations into manholes. We take out all the equipment, we fill in the valve vault, which is a much smaller manhole, and we leave the big one and it just becomes a manhole. And then we will cross the draw here and collect the Spencer Hollow lift station. That's a much newer one. It's only been in service for about 4 years. But we'll be able to salvage quite a bit of the material out of there since it is newer. Our guys will be able to have some spare pumps for some of the other stations that we have. It does have a backup generator that we'll be able to repurpose in some other locations. You can see here the access road, so that's how we're gonna get here. This will access out onto Wells Ferry. Probably not the right time to go take a drive right now because you can't get through on Wells Ferry with the bridge construction. But when that's done, or if you've driven there really in the last couple months, if you remember, we had a tree clearing contract that we had to do to satisfy the Indiana BAT contract requirement from the DNR. So all those trees came down in March and April, and you could really get a straight view of where we're going. This ground works really well for us. Aside from the initial entrance off Wells Ferry, it's very flat. We were able to get a no-rise certification because some of this is in a newly expanded floodplain area. We will elevate all the infrastructure to be 2 feet above that. So then as I said, this is the 8-inch line that's gonna catch the subdivisions. The big 24-inch we have to cross Spencer Creek once, and then we will parallel the creek for a portion until we head out to cross I-80. Zoom in a little here. You can see we cross here, and then we have some of these, unfortunately, kind of funky bends that we've got to do because this south line right here is the Iowa DOT right-of-way line, and we are not allowed to locate in DOT right-of-way. We have to be outside DOT right-of-way. That is because it's federal interstate right-of-way. It'd be a little different if it was state highway. So then we're going to get through. There are 2 property owners on the north side, both members of the Holst family. We've got a Holst Farms property, and Alvin and Diane Holst that own 3 of these parcels here. We've got easement agreements in place with all of them. We are finalizing details, just getting signatures, and we'll get all that recorded and get those purchased. The project will cross this last waterway here that's right on the border between the Holst Farms property and the portion of ground that the TBK development team purchased a couple years ago or a year ago. So we'll get across the waterway and then we're gonna stop. Part of what we had to be mindful for is SRF is really not intended for speculative growth. Now we know that we have no immediate projects, as in nothing, that's actually been submitted out here, but we do know what is, gonna be out here is probably the minute we finish construction, something's going to. So we had to balance how much we could try to submit for SRF approval, and I think we really hit the sweet spot here, and we do have that approval. The red would be future extension. My plan would be we get this project in, we are going to stub the piece under Middle Road as part of the I-80 and Middle Road construction. When that's all tore up, they're actually replacing that box culvert that you can see right here. So they'll just be able to drop our sewer pipe in right at that same time. And then if and when something happens, which it'll be sooner than later, as part of that development, we'll connect the dots. We'll get that extension over to Middle Road. We are going to obtain the easements from the TPK group through the property now, because that's actually how we're going to access the ground. That way we can come from Middle. Unfortunately, with where we cross further east, we're in the middle of the field. So it would either come from Middle, or we'd be purchasing easements just to get through, and we've got another waterway here to try to come over from Wells Ferry. This will actually work out very well. All right. This is probably the one you're most interested in, and this is the service areas. So what the project is being sized for. So the background that you will see in blue was an early rendition of from the comp plan that they pulled over with some of the preliminary future land uses that were proposed. We will have that updated with now the approved future land use plan. But the initial service build out is basically, I would say, about 80% of what's in the city limit now is what we're being initially sized for. So that's about 1,800 acres that will open up. That's a 2045, so that's a 20-year horizon. That aligns with, we were working with the future land use map that was approved. So using those proposed land uses is how we size the station, essentially. So in that 20-year build, it's about 9,000 people is what the population equivalent would be. Now, obviously, it's not all residential out there. So the various land uses have various sewer uses that it generates, but that would equate to about 9,000 residential users is what it's initially sized for. So the initial build, the structure itself, the lift station, will be built to the final configuration. We will not need to do any additions to the station for the future build out. You'll most likely have to do a little bit of electrical upgrade. We're still gonna run as large a service as they can handle right now, coming from Wells Ferry. It'll have 4,000, roughly 1,000 gallon a minute pumps, is what's the station's initially sized for. When we get to that future build out, when we exceed the capacity, which is hard to see here, but 2.7 MGD is what the peak hourly flow. Just to put that in comparison, our dry weather flow, so not peak, our dry weather flow for all of Bettendorf right now is about 6.5 MGD. So we're talking a pretty substantial area here that we'll be able to handle with this initial build out. And then, we hope it's sooner than 20 years that we need to be out there. All we'll have to do is swap out the pumps. They'll get substantially larger. They have to be about 3 times as large to handle the full, what amounts to 5,800 acres, plus or minus, that are shown in the future annexation map. Excuse me. And then a few other minor upgrades, again, mostly the controls. And by that point in time, 20 years is probably about your service life for the pumps you're getting nowadays. So they would most likely have to be replaced as is. Okay, so this is not going to show real well, but
Very pretty.
I was just thinking that.
what this is, let me jump back a couple.
Minecraft version.
We imagine trying to put together a graphic to show a 70-year-old farmer about what we're trying to cut through here. We were doing our best to try to help with some visuals. We've got some unique challenges on the north side of 80 because of that right-of-way line and where we have to go through. You'll see this dashed line here on the north side, if you can see that. That's our proposed easement lines. You can see they're pretty substantial that we have to buy through there. Most of it's temporary construction easements. But if you drive out there, if you can picture those 2 large hills that are on the north side of 80, we have to cut right through the center of those. Because we're putting that sewer as close to the right-of-way as we can, because we also can't work in the right-of-way. So we not only can't locate, we can't work within the DOT right-of-way fence. So we put together these couple of graphics to help. I'll jump back out here. Show through here. What the gradients change is about 10 foot in elevation, but what you're seeing, this is what it looks like out there right now. So if you're standing east side of the 2 hills looking west, you can see there's a slope, there's a valley, there's another big slope. We have to put our sewer right through about here. If we did that with the elevations that are out there right now, our sewer would be in some places 60 feet deep. Obviously not possible. At least not in a way that we could financially afford. So what we have to do is we have to cut right through those hills, bench back in, and our final sewer depth is still probably the deepest sewer that we have in the city. It's gonna be on the range of 32 to 35 foot deep. But again, if we did not purchase this ground, we have to haul this dirt out. We would not be able to find one pipe material that can handle 60 foot of dirt sitting over the top of it. We'd never be able to maintain it. Lots of problems there. So that's part of the reason the easements are what they are. You can kind of see the limits here. And I'll zoom in just a bit, just so you can see, a little hard to see, but this difference, so each one of these rectangles is 5 foot in elevation. So we have to take all of this material off that hill to be able to get that sewer back through there. So we do have some challenging constraints. The property owners actually have been really willing to work with us, which we're very happy to see. You know, it's going to create some challenges for them, you know, in the near future with, so that's why the easements, you know, are probably a higher dollar value in terms of percentage than we're used to seeing to pay for a sewer easement. We're still only about, maybe 25% of what we had to pay and had to purchase out of Forest Grove. So we're going to spend probably $250,000 on easements out here. But obviously we're, you know, at a $10 million overall project. So schedule is the project's going to go out for bids on Wednesday. It's got a month-long bid period. We've, through McClure, who's our consulting engineer, said they've still been similar to what we've been seeing, really good pricing on almost all of their projects. This is a large enough project that it's going to draw some out-of-town contractors, probably some large pipe contractors. We've got a couple of deep sewer guys in the Quad Cities that absolutely will be going after this as well. It's probably a little over a year's worth of construction. We'll get some work done. I don't know if we'll get any actual pipe in the ground this year, but I would expect, you know, we've got shop drawing submittals. This pipe's not something that's sitting on a stock shelf in a yard somewhere. So you got to get the pipe ordered. You know, the structural concrete, some of the masonry, maybe some of that work gets done. All the pumps and all the equipment has to get ordered. 2025 will be the bulk year of the construction, with maybe a little cleanup in the spring of 26. So with that, I think that's all I had for you. Have any questions?
Questions for Brent? Jerry, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. So for these easements, the Holmes property, the TBK property, they're going to benefit from this. So is that being taken into account when they price out their easements? Or do we have a significant connection fee at a later date?
So in terms of easements, unfortunately, we can't take into the account the future value. There is a standardized procedure because we are using state money. So you have to pay a certain percentage at fair market value for the ground. The ground was valued pretty consistently. So the city's 20 acres, for comparison, that we have right adjacent to Middle Road, was appraised by the Iowa DOT as part of the I-80 Middle project. And I believe that was 48 or 49,000 an acre. As we worked our way down east of Middle Road, the property went down in value a couple thousand per acre, basically per parcel. And then there's a percentage of the damages, basically a damage to the property is how it's set. So I completely agree with you. Unfortunately, we're pretty tied. There is a standardized procedure on easements for this kind of project.
Other questions? Greg and Lisa?
Just nothing to do with the project, but how are other utilities going to get to the site?
So to the lift station?
No, water, power, fiber, optic. We got 1,800 acres that are going to be developed. How do the
Just get to
utilities-
the,
Yeah.
gotcha, get to the north side.
Yeah.
So the DOT is working with all of those utilities as part of the I-80 and Middle interchange. Water does have a plan already. They will most likely be in, they've got an approved plan. They want to be in before construction starts, at least get their casing pipe, because they've all got unique circumstances as private utilities, or I should say where they can locate and where they can't. Water is going to stub in a casing pipe next spring. I've already seen the plan. They've got it approved. We'll have sewer. Some of the fiber companies already exist across there. They've got to relocate in some situations. But they've all been, so the DOT has a very standardized utility accommodation process where they have to contact any utility provider in the area. I have had conversations with Mid-American. They are most likely not going to try to put anything under the interchange on the electric side. They're going to come back in from the transmission main that runs on Wells Ferry. So they would backfeed in from the east. And then gas, I believe, is planning to stub across as part of the project as well.
Thank you. Sure.
Lisa?
Are they, where they're gonna dig, is that dirt they're hauling away, or they're gonna dig and then build the topography back up?
No, so that's the kind of the kicker there, is that we have to keep it down at that level because we can't have all the weight of that material sitting on our pipe. So it's kind of parcel dependent. The eastern Holst properties, they don't want the dirt, so that's gonna be part of the contract to get hauled off. The Holst Farms property does, so it'll actually save us some money because we can just truck it up to the north side of the property.
Okay.
And then all the topsoil gets retained and put back on.
Okay.
Greg?
Thank you, Art. When we go under Interstate 80, is the expansion of there's gonna go to 6-lane at some point, is that gonna cause
Yes.
any issues?
No, so we have to, one of the requirements, if you're gonna locate under any state or federal highways, is you have to put it in a casing pipe. So we have a 24-inch sewer main, so we probably have a 36-inch casing pipe that will get stubbed in there, and it's gotta be cased from right-of-way line to right-of-way line. And the DOT does have enough right-of-way in that area.
But
They're only,
the actual construction,
no, won't cause any
how
issues.
deep is it?
I think we're probably 25 feet there.
Other questions? Yep,
Thank you.
Frank?
Thank you, Ron. Does this project offer any help to developers as far as wanting to be on the east side of Criswell?
This will not. No, so unfortunately or unfortunately, I suppose, I will probably be back in front of you in a month or two once we get this thing squared away, asking for approval to potentially look at another SRF planning and design loan. So that's what we used for the design of this project. That gets rolled right into our basically like a construction loan gets rolled into a mortgage. That will get rolled into our construction loan for this project. With the interest that we're seeing east of Middle, which is ratcheting up quite quickly, McClure has done a feasibility study initially for us. That's where we had some of those maps that you've seen in the initial estimates. At this point, I think once we get this under construction, that we'll want to try it, with your permission, if everyone's agreeing, to move forward at least with the design of that project. That's going to be a much more intense project because of all the landowners. It's just a pipe project. There's no lift station needed, but you got a creek crossing and a lot of developed lots south of there. So I will probably be sitting back here with some similar graphics, looking to move forward, at least on the design of that end, sooner than later, knowing it's going to take several years before that could get to fruition.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Doctor.
Brent, is this typical SRF loan rate, 1 or 2%, or just a shade?
I think it's a little higher right now. It does fluctuate with the market. I think it's 2.6, 2.8.
Yeah,
Jason?
they've, in recent past, added an inflationary factor to the rate. So it does change periodically, but it's still much more advantageous than what we can get in like a geo setting. So certainly the route we want to go for projects like this.
So 2.6 for 20 years?
Yes.
20 years, correct.
Still a pretty good rate, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Brent, you mentioned having to build above the newly defined floodplain by 2 feet. Will we also have to do any reinforcement to the creek beds to ensure that there's not a significant amount of washout in the event of a major flood that would expose or leave us exposed in that?
No, so there's really two types of construction that will happen down in the creek area. Let's bring that up. The station itself is set pretty far back from the banks, so don't have any concern there, plus it'll have a deep foundation. Over the years, 15, 20 years from now, yeah, we'll need to make sure we're monitoring that we don't have any scour in that. When we cross the creek, there's standardized creek crossing procedures. You've got to de-water, you've got to basically build a coffer dam to get your pipe across and then reestablish the creek. Beyond that, there's not much that we'll need to do. Scott County is rebuilding their bridges here. The windmillers and their engineers are trying to figure out best solution for detention in the area. There could be some project work together in that area if if they try to do something on creek, but for this project, no, you will not have to.
Got it. Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, Jerry?
Thank you, Your Honor. For the windmillers, where does the stormwater go?
Their stormwater,
Yeah, after it leaves the detention pond, yes.
they will discharge right into Spencer Creek in some way, shape, or form. We haven't seen any of their design. What they may look at, and we've got this in a few areas around the city, and I think it actually could really be more of a benefit. They may try to do some inline detention, either actually on Spencer Creek, excuse me, or just off it, but potentially upstream of their development. So they would detain and slow that water an equivalent amount of what they generate off their site, which actually could provide us some benefit, because if that happened, that would be up in this location that would actually be upstream of our lift station. So it could provide some calming effect and help preserve, to Nick's point, that portion of the creek there. But again, that we haven't seen any actual engineering from them yet, but we've had a few discussions with their engineer.
Other questions? Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion that we take a look at consent item C on tomorrow night's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll take it up tomorrow night. How about a motion to approve consent D?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Any remaining consent agenda items any particular council member would like to discuss at this time? I'd like to entertain a motion to approve all remaining consent agenda items.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll take up all items on consent tomorrow night. Any other questions on the items to appear tomorrow? Third and final readings times 3 and a couple recognitions. All right. I have no item to add to that agenda for tomorrow. Any council member have something to add to the agenda? All right. We now will enter executive session for 2 functions. First, we'll take up the purpose of discussing information concerning some cybersecurity and critical infrastructure relating to consent item K. This is pursuant to Iowa Code Section 21.5, Sub 1, Sub K. And then we will discuss the performance evaluation of our city administrator. This is pursuant to Iowa Code Section 21.5, Sub 1, Sub I. Mr. Plain, do we have your request and/or permission to enter executive session for the purposes of your performance evaluation?
Yes, you do, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. Then I would like to entertain a motion to enter executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Michelle, please call the roll.
Adamson.
Aye.
Brown.
Aye.
Jaeger.
Your Honor, is this to go into executive session pursuant Section 1K, and then we will come out and then go back in, or are you
Gonna be able to go
desirous
for
of doing
both.
both?
Let's do both.
I believe that's the correct way to do it. I think we can enter it for, the way that the statute reads, you can enter a single executive session for 2 purposes as long as the discussion
Stays
remains
separate.
on those 2.
And you'll have separate recordings?
Probably
In the
would
event
have
we were
to.
to be sued, and
You only
somebody
get
were
one.
to ask for their executive session minutes, I would hesitate to give discussion about the city administrator if we are talking about cybersecurity things. Technical point, Your Honor, I don't, aye.
Nauman.
Aye.
Sexer.
Aye.
Baden.
Aye.
Palczynski.
Okay. We have unanimously voted to enter executive session. We can make 2 different tapes. That can make some sense unless there's a way if we get,
Or we could separate, we can.
We can do that afterwards.
If we get a request
You
for
can
for
separate it.
one, we can separate them.
okay, perfect. All right, so if you are not part of our executive session, thank you for being here. You can just,
Administrator.
Adamson,
Aye.
Brown.
Aye.
Jaeger.
Aye.
Nauman.
Aye.
Sexer.
Aye.
Baden.
Aye.
Palczynski. All right, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.